A tip of the cap to you, and welcome to the Pilot Money Guys podcast, flight 58. Charlie,
Yes,
can you
sir.
believe it? 58 already?
Crazy.
Crazy. It is, really is. Well, this is a podcast where we discuss a flying related news or event situation going on and aim to bring you some lighthearted financial fun through a topic that we pick. I'm your host, wealth manager, and major airline captain, former Air Force Heavy evaluator pilot, Robert the Rubber Mallet Eklund. And of course, joined today by former major airline first officer, as well as former Air Force instructor pilot and fighter pilot. Were you an evaluator, Charlie? I was going to ask.
Only in the mighty tweet
Hey, that works.
of
An
other
evaluator pilot.
of other students. That was back in the day. You were a check airman. Remember that? Remember that stuff?
Wait, what?
The mighty check airman.
What did you do?
Yes.
You were in the tweet?
I was a tweet FAPE. Remember?
Yeah, and you were evaluated there. Yeah, that counts.
But
that's
you
probably
had
like the most important evaluator there may be, because those guys don't know how to fly yet.
Oh yeah, it was fun though because you could actually you could be an evaluator in check flight. Remember all that stuff?
Yeah.
But then you weren't an evaluator, especially as a FAPE. It was pretty rare for a FAPE to be an actual evaluator, or FAA, or whatever we called it then, stand eval value, of other instructor pilots.
Okay.
So that was pretty rare.
So you wouldn't be, I got you. You wouldn't evaluate other instructor pilots, but you'd evaluate students.
The students. Yes, that's right.
Awesome, man. Well, welcome, Charlie, the Godfather Mattingly.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You bet. Let's jump into it. Aviation news, lots brewing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And as you would say, Charlie, fights on.
Fights on.
Aviation news. Do you have to repeat that? Fights on, fights on.
Fights on.
Fights on, fights on.
Just
Okay, aviation news. Let's get to it. FedEx, lots going on really right now, Charlie, on the airline front. We got FedEx had a strike authorization vote. Now they have an agreement in principle. That's breaking news as recording this the 1st of June, 2023. I'm sure people are going to be listening to this probably 10 years in the future. So got to put that date in there. American had a strong strike authorization vote, right? Now they have an agreement in principle. And from what I've heard, it's, I don't know if it's everything they want, but snap up pay rate, 21%. Then I think it's like 5,443, something like that. It's 37% over 5 years with a 401k in 2024 of, I might get this wrong. 17%, 17%, and then 26 jumps up to 18%.
Okay.
So that's pretty good, I think.
Yeah. How does that compare to Deltas? Is that similar or?
Oh, for some reason I didn't get. I should know that off the top of my head, but I didn't have that.
Oh, that's all right. I'm sure they're. It's kind of the one ups this and one up that, and
I think it's similar. I think it's similar. I know Delta was it 34% over 5? So I think it beats it maybe by a little bit, but they needed to catch up a little bit, I think, in the first place. So
yeah.
But it reminded me, it kind of reminded me of one of my buddies I was talking to. He dropped some knowledge on me when I was talking to him. He's a UPS guy, SoCal surfer. He's not all about the money. He's all about the time and the experience. As a matter of fact, he's going to Costa Rica for a surfing trip pretty soon. But he told me, he's like, we were talking about contracts and just, aviation related stuff and how all the pilots are going through contract negotiations, or a lot of us. And he said that we're talking about, well, quality of life, this, quality of life, that. He says, you know what the best quality of life issue you can negotiate is? More money. I was like, it made me scratch my head for a second, because I was thinking, vacation or work rules. And he's like, with more money, you get a chance to take more vacation and build your time off because you don't have to work as much.
That's right.
And I was like, yeah, that's probably true.
It is. It really boils down to that one thing, just about,
Yeah. It's funny. So continuing on here, we got, of course, Delta and Alaska had strike authorization votes that were very strong. Now they have contracts, I believe, or pretty darn close to it. I think they both have actual contracts. And then Southwest had a very strong SAV. No agreement in principle yet. SAV, of course, strike authorization vote. And then United is picketed, but no strike authorization vote or agreement in principle as of yet. There's some other ones thrown in there, but I just thought I'd hit the highlights. Moving on, in other news, if you will, on May 26th, a passenger aboard an Asiana Airlines flight opened the emergency exit door while the plane was in midair, causing air to blast inside the cabin, of course, because he was uncomfortable, Charlie. Hey, I'm okay. I'm just going to open this door. No big
Open
deal.
that door, somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. There are 194 people on board. I think it was an Airbus 321, 200 series. And 12 passengers were taken to the hospital for breathing issues and other minor injuries. They were all discharged from the hospital within 2 hours, which is good news. But after he was detained, he told the police that he wanted to get off the plane quickly and was stressed after recently losing his job. Of course, when I heard this, I think when most of us heard this, we were like, what? How do you open the door? You can't open the door. But once we heard the AGL altitude, the above ground level altitude, he was only 700 feet above the ground at the time.
Okay.
So the airplane wasn't pressurized for all you non-aviation types. So you could actually open the door at that altitude. If you're up at altitude, of course, the pressurization is too much. It's impossible to open the door. But down low, you could do it. And also down that low, it wouldn't trigger the oxygen mask dropping from the ceiling, which didn't happen. So because you have to be, around 10,000 feet, depending on the airplane system there, to drop the mask. So pretty interesting. Looked like a disaster movie is what one of the people described it as. I guess after he opened it, one of the passengers and the flight attendant grabbed him back, and one of the passengers said, frankly speaking, I thought, am I going to die? And a million things went through his mind at the time. He was an ordinary citizen, and he said he did what the flight attendant told him to do, and they all lived. So kudos to the flight attendant there. Otherwise, let's bring it down a notch. This podcast is brought to you by Leading Edge Financial Planning. What is your purpose in life? I'm asking you to stop and think about it. Maybe even pause this podcast and think about it. As the old saying goes, the purpose of life is a life with purpose. I'd rather die for a cause than live a life that is worthless. I would argue that this is the first step in your journey toward being intentional. Along the way, Charlie and I can help guide you down the next steps and help you put your finances to work to achieve your purpose in life. You can reach me at 719-624-7055 or Charlie, give him a call at 865-240-2292, as well as any of our other advisors at Leading Edge Financial Planning. Now, back to the show. Charlie, health and wealth. Here we go.
I'm excited.
It's a good one. A lot of you may be thinking, why the heck are we talking about health? Charlie, full disclaimer, Charlie and I are not doctors. I don't know if you knew that. We're not doctors. So full disclosure there. But when you talk about health and wealth, they go together. When health is absent, as this Greek physician Herophilus once said, you can't ever talk about health without throwing a Greek physician in there. I don't think, Charlie. Can you?
Makes us sound more intelligent for sure.
Well, that's why I do it, really. When health is absent, wealth becomes useless. So that was said by ancient Greek physician Herophilus again, who was the doctor who determined that the brain controlled the body, not the heart. But my wife, a romantic comedy writer, would probably disagree with Herophilus on that one. The longer you are alive, the longer you have a chance to let the power of compounding work for you, folks. That's why we're talking about this a little bit. There's also some other connections there that we're going to talk about. So if you're healthy, the thought is you're going to live longer, right? So you give yourself a chance to compound and double your money, that many more times. This is one we've thrown at you a few times, but Warren Buffett has since continued to use this law of compounding to his advantage. I think the first time I said this, he was worth around 84 billion, Charlie. Now he's worth around 110 billion. And again, most people don't realize that 106 of that 110 billion came after he was considered a senior citizen, around the age of 60 there for him. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, to watch that trajectory, if you graph that out, it's like a flat line almost. And then at 60, 65, it goes straight up-ish. But
yeah, matter of fact, I've got the if you let me share the screen, I've got the, for those of you who are watching this, there it is. Can you see that?
Okay? Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it?
Look at that. Right at the age of 60, it was about 59. It was 3.8 billion, and then 91. This one stops when he was 91. There's 91. That's
exponential. That's compound growth right there. It's hard to imagine.
It's just crazy.
But Rob, the one thing, and we do want to live longer, like you talked about, so we can take advantage of that compounding. But we're all living longer. Just life expectancies are increasing. But what's happening is that people may not necessarily have the quality of life in those later, longer years. And that's the real part that I'm passionate about, because we do a lot of planning. We plan for this, we plan. And then if someone is in poor health, either now or in retirement, it's like, man, all that planning, why bother? Like you said, it's really, if you don't have your health, it's none of it's worth it. I was talking to one of our pilots the other day, and he was like, man, I've changed my diet. I've started exercising. Some aches and pains have gone away, and I'm playing now with my grandkids and playing golf or whatever. And it was just like, it was awesome to hear that.
You said he was exercising.
Which part?
He's just playing golf.
Yeah. That too.
At golfers,
exercising and golfing, but yeah, it just was a game changer, and it's like, well, who cares if you've got millions and millions, and well, that's kind of nice, but nonetheless, if you can't move, if you can't enjoy it, what's it for? And so that's our mission, statement has to do with helping people with their quality of life, not just in retirement, but throughout, because that's huge.
That's for sure. I know this is a plug for our last podcast, Flight 57, I believe. Reasons to be optimistic, but one of those, we talked about longevity, and I know we went over the numbers, Charlie, but it did not dawn on me that since 1900 the life expectancy was around 47, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at the turn of the century, it was close to 80 there. So
absolutely,
not quite, but almost doubled in a span of 100 years, mainly due to, I guess, vaccinations and a lot of medical developments. Mm-hmm. Not that those are the end all be all, but that did not dawn on me. So I thought I wanted to throw that. People was like, that's almost a doubling. And, I don't think it's going to double in the next 100, but it could. Who knows?
That'd be incredible. It's incredible. But I can't wait today to talk about these steps that we can all take and do, and your story and my story, and how we've, tackled this issue. Because to me, if I can get enough sleep, if I can start my day off with exercise, then I can handle anything. I'm not saying I can do anything, but anything that comes my way, at least I've done those things well, and we can get through the rest. So that, to me, that's
Amen,
a good start.
I love it. Mm-hmm. And here's a little context to, again, tying that connection that I talked about a little bit earlier, that health and the wealth. And there was an academic study by the researchers of the Urban Institute of Virginia, Commonwealth University, that assessed the intricate connection between health and income, which was interesting to me. And the main takeaway of the report, published in 2015, you can go read it, but in simple terms, was that those who are healthier also tend to live longer. Mm-hmm. And the health and income correlate across the socioeconomic spectrum, which is to say the richest have fewer poor health conditions. That's kind of a weird way of saying that, but the richest have fewer poor health conditions than the upper middle class, who in turn are fitter and healthier than the lower middle class. And that pattern continues. The report took an in-depth look into health issues, and in the vast majority of instances, the wealthier were healthier. And that, my take on that, Charlie, that's not rocket science. If you're wealthier, you have access to more organic, less toxic foods, better gyms, perhaps better physical trainers. Maybe, I think I'm pulling this completely out of thin air, but I think the richer probably have access to more mental health professionals, which is important, and perhaps better doctors, and the list goes on and on. But it's kind of funny that we were just talking about pilot contracts and more money, and then there's a study that actually says the more money you make, or the wealthier you are, might be tied to longer living and a healthier lifestyle. What do you think about that, Charlie?
Sometimes I take the opposite approach to that. And what I mean by that is, I wonder if the wealthier are healthier because they were first healthy. In other words, in other words, like
kind of thing.
Yeah. In other words, if I am of a mindset to where I'm working out, I'm taking care of myself, that health, that mindset permeates throughout every part of our lives. Now, for example, like triathletes, I think they did a polling of triathletes, and every one of them were very successful in their work and career as well. And I mean, what kind of mentality does it take to go be an Ironman
Sure.
triathlete? I mean, you got to have a pretty phenomenal work ethic and
Discipline. Yeah.
discipline. Yeah. And so all those things lead to success in other parts of our lives as well. So it is obviously, I think what you said is true. If you've got money, you're going to have, it's a shame, quite frankly, that healthy food costs a lot more than unhealthy food, but that's just the reality of where we're at. But I do think there's something to be said for, when somebody is diligent about their health, it leads to success in every aspect of our lives. And that's kind of the way I think about it. Like, if I can exercise, I can handle anything. That's kind of my mentality anyway. But yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I'm not trying to muddy the waters, and
Yeah.
I don't have answers on this, but I did think it was interesting how Europe, their longevity is actually longer than ours, even though they smoke more than we do. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that part of that is we're going to talk about the leading causes of death and some folks, but part of that is the what they eat. We're obviously talking about the United States here that it costs more. I think over in Europe it's a lot easier and a lot more. It's a lot cheaper to buy food that is organic, and that's some of their
Yeah.
governmental uh, regulations. I don't think they're allowed to do some of the things that we can with processed food and
Yeah.
some of that stuff. And that, good or bad,
Yeah.
obviously we're feeding the world, so there's a lot of good stuff going on there.
Yeah.
But they are healthier, even though they
That's a,
smoke more than we do.
I know that's a whole nother podcast. I've got a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
In fact, it's Ron Broyles. He was one of our early podcast guests. He was the urban mountain climber, stuntman. He
Oh,
has
love
gone.
it.
Yeah, check it out. Check out that podcast. He's gone on a quest to decipher the nutrition labels on our foods.
Love it.
And he's super passionate about exactly what you just said, Rob. I mean, we can argue about regulation, whether that's good or bad or whatever, but
Right.
quite
Right.
frankly, the food in Europe is much more regulated, and therefore there's not as much processed ingredients, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of other issues that, again, could be a whole nother podcast, but nutrition is so important. I read a lot of stuff and thought about what to say, but there's so much stuff. And none of it is really that black and white, quite frankly, just like this nutrition stuff we're talking about.
Yeah, and one of the best, I think, perhaps at doing this is Dr. Peter Attia, which he's got his own podcast, great stuff. He does a lot of good work and graduated from Stanford. He is a physician known for the medical practice that focuses on the science of longevity. And it just so happens he was also the first person to make the round trip swim from Maui to Lanai, which is pretty cool. Wish I could do that. Again, graduated from Stanford, then spent 5 years at Johns Hopkins as a general surgeon resident, and followed by 2 years as a surgical oncologist at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. Is the author of the book Outlive the Science of and Art of Longevity with Bill Gifford, and which has been a runaway bestseller in 2023. So check that out. But also the podcast of what's called the Drive podcast there. Anyways, he looks at the problem the way I think I'm going to follow him on looking at this, and he looks at it as most of us in the military, we've talked about something like this. You define your objective, develop your strategy, and then employ your tactics. So objective, strategy, tactics. Those who jump from objective to tactics don't do as well. Matter of fact, they say that might be the first sounds of defeat, which I'll get to a nice little quote later. But anyways, so if the objective here, Charlie, we're talking about health and wealth, or maybe we're talking about longevity. We could maybe define this as the objective is to live longer, which helps your wealth, as we've already talked about. Then the first thing he says, Dr. Attia says, is you have to know how you die.
Yeah.
So he goes on to explain that if it turns out if someone lives past 50 years old and doesn't smoke, there are about 5 things that are really going to call the Grim Reaper to your door. And if you're over 50 and don't smoke, again, you're likely to die 80% of the time from atherosclerotic disease. Think heart vascular disease, right? That's the number one. Second is cancer. Third is neurodegenerative disease. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. Think Alzheimer's and dementia. The fourth are foundational diseases. Think type 2 diabetes, insulin, obesity, those kind of things. And then the fifth, which is super interesting, is he threw in there was accidental death. Think automobile accidents and elderly folks who fall. elderly folks who fall, that tends to maybe be the precursor to, their death because of the issues that arise from that fall.
Mhm.
So those 5 things: think heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and accidental death. Now we have that. We've kind of got this strategy. Well, we talked about living longer. The strategy that being developed is combating those 5 things that are the 80% cause of death. So the way he frames it, and we'll just tack on to him, is he combats these risks by thinking about the 3 components of health span. And that's where it gets into the tactics, which is what we really want to know, right? And we can give you this list, folks, and you probably know them already. It's not exactly rocket science. A lot of it's pretty normal stuff, but the real trick here is taking action on it. It's got to be actionable. You got to go out there and do it. But anyways, the 3 components of health span are: the first one's cognitive, second's physical, and the third's emotional. The cognitive piece, obviously, most of the efforts that we put into preserving cognition are basically directly in line with efforts. I said obviously, I didn't mean obviously. Not obviously. The efforts we put into preserving cognition are basically directly in line with the efforts we make to reduce risks in the other areas of the physical and maybe even emotional, which was interesting to me. You got some of those apps out there that are testing your brain, and I think for the most part those have had limited results. But here's the ways that most doctors are thinking about it right now: avoiding tobacco, working out, eating healthy, controlling your blood pressure, and limiting alcohol consumption. Those are what will help your cognitive abilities as you age, which I thought was fascinating, actually, Charlie. I kind of knew it, but I didn't exactly know that's how you.
So what were those again? Because I was listening for like some kind of brain exercise, but what were they?
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah. So really, it's similar to the other facets there.
Right.
This is what I found. Again, not a doctor. Avoiding tobacco, working out, eating healthy, controlling your blood pressure, and limiting alcohol consumption.
Yeah. It's interesting because part of my research was from neurosciencenews.com, and the headline of the article is Exercise and the Brain, the Neuroscience of Fitness. So it's funny because you talked about cognitive being so important, and cognitive decline. Obviously, we want to avoid that. And this article goes on to talk about how exercise stimulates cognitive health. And that's probably why there's no need for these apps, possibly, or I don't know. I think reading's got to be good for you, but nonetheless,
right? Yeah, you have to
playing the piano or something. I don't know, but it talks about how aerobic exercise can affect your brain volume. It says regular aerobic exercise, like running, can increase the size of the hippocampus and preserve vital brain matter, improving spatial memory and cognitive function. So it's just amazing. I mean, exercise, it's like that effect that we talked about. The benefits permeate through everything. It's incredible.
Yeah. I think, and this will kind of tie into the emotional piece, if you will, and having social interactions as well.
Absolutely.
So, again, not something you think, oh, if I, think, solve calculus problems or algorithms or something, may help. But from what the experts are saying is that's limited, results in these things, to your point, physical aspects.
That's cool.
So we get to the physical component, and this is where I think a lot of us kind of thrive, if you will. And this is really the first thing that starts to compromise your quality of life. To your point, Charlie, knee pain, back pain. I love that you said one of your clients is he started working out and a lot of his pains went away. Because I've noticed that even when I was younger. That I know I'm only 21, but when I was younger, I had some back pain sleeping. Just wake up, and my back would be in pain. But then I started working out, and that pain went away. Like instantaneous feedback. Not right away, but within a couple of months of working out, the back pain was gone. So it wasn't my mattress. It was just my body saying, "Hey, you're not in shape," which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, the physical seems Seems physical. That solution, I guess, is all physical in that. Except then you could talk about nutrition, and I'm fascinated
For
with
sure.
how eating right can help with inflammation. We talk about inflammation all the time, right? My wife and I went to he's a chiropractor, but he has a very well-rounded practice where he looks at nutrition and gut health and all those things. And we talked about the how to prevent inflammation in your body. To me, it seems like it boils down to limiting the sugars in your diet. But nonetheless, those can cause aches and pains as well, it seems like.
At least the bad sugars, right?
Yeah.
I like to think about this, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Charlie. Just personally, how I think about it is what I call the life elements. And I think about sleep, air, food, and water. And if I tackle those four things, I'm probably going to be in pretty good uh, physical health. So sleep's the first one. You spend about a third of your life in bed,
Yeah.
right? Some people may say, I only sleep 6 hours. Well, you spend a fourth of your life in bed. Invest in a good mattress, a
Yeah.
good pillow, a good sheet, black out your room, make it cool, whatever you need to do to get good sleep. That's a third of your life is in bed. So don't skimp. And we're talking about investment. We're investors here, right, Charlie? So invest in a good mattress, and a good pillow, get some good thread count sheets there. Take care of yourself for the third of the time you're in bed there. Air, I think about breathing. Obviously, we've talked about in previous podcasts, Wim Hof breathing exercises. And they found that, the book Breathe, I believe is what it's called, goes in depth on how we are supposed to breathe and how we, in years past, and our ancestors used to breathe better, and now we don't breathe as well. But when I think about air, one of the things my wife has really got me into is clean air, right? With plants. We live in a forest, so some of the trees are doing the cleaning process for us. But if you live indoors or anywhere you're at, you can buy certain plants that filter the air. We've got several, oh geez, I'm forgetting the name of them right now, but several plants around the house that are supposed to clean the air. So if you can do that, do that. So again, sleep, air, food, obviously the food, non-processed, organic, grass-fed beef, if you can do that, limiting your sugar, to your point there, putting the right foods in your body.
Yeah.
And it's all nice to think about, and teach their own, right? If you've got your vegetable or your vegan or whatever diet, if you feel good on that, I think you go do it, right?
Yeah.
Follow the people you want to follow. But if you're doing what you feel is good for your body, then that's great. I would encourage you to maybe take a journal and test it out. Hey, do I actually feel better doing this diet, or maybe an animal diet where it's all just fruit and honey and grass-fed beef? Which one makes you feel better? Right?
Rob, I got to make a confession right now. You ready?
Okay, go.
I'm in my, and one of our listeners, Brian, out in Colorado, will be happy. I'm doing his plant-based diet recommendation right now.
Oh, wow.
I'm in week 4. And so, I was just, I'm going to try this out just to see. Because I watched that, our guy, Mark Covell, recommended the Netflix. We talked about this, you and I, I'm sure. Game Changers. Remember that? Yeah. So it was interesting and compelling a little bit. So a couple of years later, I finally was like, all right, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So ever since Mother's Day, I've been totally, and I want to say it's not really vegan. Vegan is a little bit different. And what I learned is, and that's the coolest part about this, Rob, is, the learning part, because vegan, what I've learned is when you say that, the intent is, I want to save animals. I'm about saving animals and all that stuff. So that's their implied desire. Whereas a plant-based person, your implication is that you believe that eating everything plant-based is healthier for you. And kind of like you said, I believe our bodies are all different. I do know one person that they had some kind of, I don't know if it was celiac or something, but they had such difficulty that they finally started eating only meat, and they've never felt better in their life, which is hard to imagine. But nonetheless, there are people like Brian. He talks to us. He's a former military guy as well, and he's like, man, I've never felt better in my life. He's a triathlete. We did pilot training together. A lot of good side effects that he says as far as high energy, even strength. But nonetheless, what your point is,
That's a tough one to swallow for me. But okay, teach us
yeah,
your point. To each their
absolutely.
own.
So each the and it's again, the game changers thing talks about these high performance athletes, whatever. I know it's controversial, but
Yes,
nonetheless,
yes,
it's for me. It's been fascinating to try something that's relatively extreme for me
yeah,
and shocking. Like, oh, I can't eat any kind of cheese. I can't, because I'm like my problem, Rob, is like I'm a convenience eater. I'll just go eat whatever's available. Luckily, most of the time it's fairly healthy.
yeah,
But this has forced me into really thinking about what I'm doing. And again, like you said, I think if you really want to give it a fair trial, you have to write down, how do you feel?
yes,
Because there's so many other factors. Like maybe I'm more consistent on my workout.
sure.
Is that what's making me feel better? But I think I really am trying to, I actually haven't written anything down yet, but I'm really trying to note, okay, do I feel better? Do I lack energy? And so it's been interesting, and the one thing I'll say, and then I'll be quiet, is that I do believe like my diet has been way healthier, but it's not because I've cut out meat. It's because I've cut out all the things that are bad for me, like cake and ice cream. And, this,
Yes,
that's
yes,
the
yeah.
commonality. Like if you take Atkins, we're gonna get real controversial now, but you take Atkins, and the benefit to me again is the same thing. You cut out cake, breads, those highly refined sugars and things like that. So to me, it's just been really interesting learning. And who knows, maybe after this trial, I'll try the Atkins to see what happens, or the keto, I
Well,
should say, keto diet.
yeah, and I think your point is super valid in that everyone's body's different, and what
Mm-hmm.
works for some doesn't work for others. Just like in investing, right? What helps me sleep better at night isn't what helps you sleep better at night. So teach their own. And along those lines, I would dare say again, not a doctor. I won't say that again. I promise. But I think that there is something to the mental part of it, where
Yeah,
if you believe that your diet is better for you, that goes a long ways. There is such a thing as the placebo effect, whether it's good or not. Your mind makes it better. So I
absolutely.
think there's a part to that. Now, to take the other side of that, actually, I don't have to take it. It's Dr. Peter Attia that takes the other side of that. He says that if you're talking about longevity, if the data is unambiguous,
Mm-hmm.
if you're north of the 75 percentile and muscle mass, you will live longer. And you
Mm-hmm.
cannot, and he doesn't say it quite this, I guess, controversially, but it is extremely hard to get above the 75th percentile of muscle mass. You can do it, I'm sure, if you dedicate your life to it, if you're not eating meat.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the bioavailability of the protein that you have to consume, and eating that protein maybe consistently throughout the day, as opposed to one or two times. What Dr. Peter Attia got into this because he was doing a DEXA scan, which is a dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. I don't know, I can't even say it. Absorptiometry, a DEXA scan every 6 months, and he'd stopped it for a while. Anyways, he did it again in 3 years later, and he noticed he was bicycling, and doing a lot of lifting and all kinds of different things.
Mm-hmm.
But he was fasting a lot, to the tune of like, 3 days a month, just water only. I think
Mm-hmm.
he did 10 days a month. Anyways, he did the DEXA scan, which can measure bone density and a BMI muscle mass, and he found that his muscle mass had decreased significantly. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, he started deconstructing that and found that he needed to increase his protein intake. And then he got himself, of course, he's not an underachiever, obviously, having swam from Maui to Lanai. He's up in like the 95th percentile of muscle mass, but he
Mm-hmm.
found that that was a significant indicator of longevity, was your muscle mass. So lifting weights and eating the right amount of protein. Continuing on with the physical component, this is again one of the first things we think about in the life elements. So we got the sleep, we got the air, we got the food, and then the last one I think is coming on board, but is water. Drinking a lot of water. It's a fascinating study from the researchers at the National Institute of Health suggests people who don't drink enough fluids could be at greater risk of chronic disease and are more likely to die at a younger age. It makes sense, and this comes from I think that study came from the folks at Harvard there. It makes sense. Your body's 70% water, right? Drinking water helps lubricate your joints, reduce colon and bladder cancer, hydrates cells, removes toxins from your liver and your kidneys, and the list goes on. So drinking water, the right amount is good. Obviously, don't drink too much of that Gatorade. What was that Gatorade study where the guy was drinking all the water? He was I think he was a Ironman triathlete, right? And his body just broke down because he drank too much water and not enough electrolytes.
Oh, wow.
Get some electrolytes in there. Do you remember seeing that?
No, I don't remember that one.
Oh, that's a great one. So
Yeah.
he was winning the Ironman triathlon and hit about, I don't know how far, maybe 50 yards from the finish line. His body just completely shut down. And it was because he didn't have the electrolytes.
Oh, yeah. It didn't have enough salt, I guess, right?
Yeah. So anyways, I think about this sometimes. One of my buddies in Upgrade, he was talking about this. He and his wife go out and get labs done every 6 months. And I thought about that. I was like, yeah, we take our cars in and we get those tuned up and we get the oil changes, but maybe we don't go in and look at ourselves enough.
Yeah.
Potentially. So anyways, the DEXA scan was pretty interesting. And the last piece before we lose you completely, the emotional piece, right?
Yeah.
By far the least tethered to age is your emotional piece there. The labs are not as relevant with this piece, so it won't be, we can't focus a lot of this in this episode, but I do remember reading a study way back when that made the connection between your emotional side of things and I kind of think about happiness and positivity and maybe even optimism thrown in there. And they looked at a lot of different things and looked at whether you ate right, whether you worked out, whether you smoked, and a lot of those things. And what they found was the most important piece of growing old gracefully was how you thought about growing old.
Yeah.
If you thought about growing old as being a good thing, you tended to age much better. So
anyways, optimism. That's an optimism piece we were talking about.
Yeah, and so this was from the folks at Harvard. They wrote about this. The study in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences found that people who had higher levels of optimism had a longer lifespan. They also had a greater chance of living past age 85, and that's what I think. Charlie, what do you think? What do you do on a daily basis to help?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, just the other day on my tractor, I pulled a favorite podcast by John Gordon. I think John Gordon's awesome. His podcast is called Positivity U. So talk about optimism. But he had, this guy might be one of those Harvard type schools. But his latest one that I was listening to, his guest is a Dr. Andrew Newberg. And he has made, I don't know if this is his specialty or of study, but he has studied the effect of prayer on your brain health. And so I haven't listened to all of it. So I'm sure he goes into meditation and things like that as well. But for me, so that's going to be interesting to see exactly what he's talking about there. But for me, what I do, my routine is again, I've just admitted that I have to have sleep. I'm not a person that can go on 6 hours of sleep every day. I wish I could. I've got to have if I do 7 hours of sleep for a few days, I'm going to end up getting 8 one day for sure, to catch up or whatever. But I pretty much set my alarm all the time for 8 hours after I go to sleep, even if I'm on weekend vacation, because I just don't want to sleep more than that for sure. And I want to know, how long I'm sleeping. But nonetheless, I'll get up and I'll read, I'll do my prayer time or devotional time for my spiritual health. And then I exercise. And so those things, if I can do those things, that's part of my morning routine, then like I said, whatever comes my way, I feel confident that I can handle the best of my ability, at least have the energy to do so. I think the tougher part, Rob, is when I was flying and, I don't know what you do now, but man, it's harder to have a routine because my sleep would get off. I would have to catch up at home or a day or two, get out of that routine. There is a benefit, I think, to being on the road because you've got that time in the hotel to go exercise. It's kind of, it's there for you. But at the same time, your habits and your routines get so far off kilter. That was a real challenge for me. I don't know. What do you do about that?
Yeah, I think it's all about the power of habit. And there's a book you and I think it was Mark talked about.
Yeah.
I have not
Atomic Habits.
read, but
Yeah.
yes, Atomic
Yeah.
Habits. There you go. Oh no, it wasn't you and Mark. It was you and someone else. I can't remember. But
Yeah.
anyways, I think it's all about the power of habit. And so I
Mhm.
made a promise to myself when I got hired at the majors there that I would do whatever I needed to do to work out that day. So
Yeah.
on PMs, frankly, it's a lot easier because you wake up, you go work out. That's what I did. My habit on a PM, I wake up, and I don't know if every airline's like this. I guess some are, some aren't. But we're broken up into AMs and PM flying.
Mhm.
You wake up on a PM means you're going to go fly during the evening portion
Mhm.
there, maybe afternoon and evening. But anyways, wake up, go work out immediately, then do whatever else I'm going to do before I go fly,
Yeah.
eat, and I think the nutrition part is maybe the most difficult part for me. Cause again, to your point, Charlie, I've got time on the road to go do some things. Getting sleep is important. AM's a little more difficult for that physical part, but I made it a point. I don't negotiate with myself anymore.
Yeah.
I don't give myself a choice. It's not a choice. I have to go work out after we land. Right.
Yeah.
Now I say that, but I guess I did negotiate myself when we were on like a 10-hour overnight. I did not go work out because I needed my 8 hours, but I should have, and probably should have. Anyways, for the most part, I will work out right after we land. So right after we get to the hotel, I go work out. Again, the nutrition part is a little more difficult for me personally. I will carry a food bag, but I don't like to. So that's where I probably need to do.
That's hard. That nutrition piece is really tough. One of the things that I started doing, Rob, was no matter what, and again, this goes back to the negotiation. I do 20 push-ups every night, no matter what.
Yeah.
Now 20 right now is pretty easy. I could do more, but it's like a contract to myself, no matter what. And it is like, again, 20 push-ups right now doesn't do much for me. It's not that big a deal, but mentally it's a huge deal because it keeps me consistent. If I miss days or I didn't get to work out that day, boom, I did my push-ups. I at least feel like I am not too far off track. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Totally
absolutely.
Totally mental contract with myself. And I do believe that that's powerful, and it's helped me to stay consistent even when because sometimes I'm like, I'll miss a few days and I'm like, all right, I'll just miss a few more, no big deal. But again, that contract to myself every evening to do those things is, I think, very powerful.
I love it. It kind of reminds me, not to go off or down a rabbit hole, but if I get down there too long, pull me back out, Charlie. This is totally off script, but I just read or listened to this person talking about how in younger folks, if there are actually lines in the brain that they can see somehow. And when you're younger, if you go about doing a task and you complete it, it draws that line.
Yeah.
And so when you get older, you get a lot better at completing things. Whereas if you're younger and you don't complete the task at hand, whatever it is, then you're less likely to be able to do that. And it deteriorates as you get older, apparently, is what this person was saying. Yeah. So, and they can actually, these scientists can see those lines in the brain. And I love that because what you're talking about there is, you put yourself to a task and you complete it every day, and it helps draw that line so that you're probably more likely to go out and do other things. Sorry.
It goes back to that habits that you talked about. In fact, that's in the book. There is a book called Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg that you may have referenced. And then there's Atomic Habits by James Clear, which are both awesome. But one of those, I can't remember which, they said, as far as working out, they had somebody just go to the gym, just showed up, turn around and went home. Didn't even work out. But it was it was the power of building that habit. Just show up. That was the first step, and then build on that. You know what I mean? And so I think that's part of this. And one of the things that I had is just boy, sitting down, in an airline lifestyle, especially, is so unhealthy. Inaction is so unhealthy. And I think we've got to find a way, for all the reasons you and I talked about today. Quality of life. Why bother with wealth if you don't have health? Nutrition, how important that is to your quality of life, and moving around, especially airline pilots, because there's so much sitting involved, so much interruption of your routine, sleep patterns, etc. It's just critical, I think, in the lifestyle of an airline pilot, especially.
Yeah, I flew with a guy, and I've told this story before, but I flew with a guy. He wasn't the nicest of guys, but I always fly with people, and there's something I can learn from them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Up there's pretty intelligent people on the flight deck there. But anyways, I flew with this guy, and I couldn't find anything about him that I could learn. He just wasn't very nice. But eventually I got into food, and that's where he said, "Hey, Rob, double your budget for your food. Go out and buy the organic, go buy the good stuff, and you'll live better for it." And I did. That was several years ago now,
Yeah.
and we've taken that forward. Jen and I have.
That's right.
And it's been helpful. But I think that power of habit, getting into those routines, doing some of those things that can help yourself. Controlling your blood pressure apparently is a big one. That, if you can do.
I'll say two things, Rob, because I know we're coming up on our time, but one of those goes along with I'll call it investing, spending the extra money in the food. Luckily, thankfully, airline pilots, and we make a good living, we can spend more money on food. Again, it's kind of a shame that you go buy organic food. It's all more expensive. Nonetheless, spend the money, period. Spend the money. Of all the things we spend our money on, that's got to be the most important things. The other side of that is go get a fitness instructor. If it's an issue of showing up, for me, I would go to the gym, and I was terribly inconsistent, had no plan, just kind of in a rut. And so I started doing CrossFit stuff. And it's a class, of course, but there is an instructor. And so to me, that helped me a ton. So I paid more money for that, or get an instructor of some sort. I think it's totally worth the investment,
I love it.
Yeah. The last thing, Rob, and I'm getting close to 50, and I'm going to throw this out there for all of our 50-year-old men that are debating this issue, right? There's a lot of debate on this, and that's a total exaggeration because there's no debate. So this is from FAA Medical Service. I'm not going where you think I'm going. We can do that on the next one. But this is the Aviation Medical Bulletin from Harvey Watt. It's excellent. It says fit after 50. Okay, Rob, here we go. If you want to stay mentally sharp in old age, hey, wait a second, 50 is not old age. So it says, do not give up sex. For those of you that were debating that, says no one. So don't give up sex. And it says seniors who keep sexually active into their 70s tend to have less memory loss and confusion later. Okay. The study interviewed people ages 63 to 75 and asked them how active they were in their daily life and whether or not they had an active sex life.
Yeah.
Participants also underwent tests for memory, attention, executive functions. The researchers found out that a healthy sex life was linked with a young mind. There you have it. Just in case anybody was debating that.
Yeah. That's where I thought you were going. It links to that Boston University public health study.
Yeah.
That talks about that same thing. It talks about, sex and having that at least 21 times per month.
Wow.
Which is a high bar to hit, I would think.
But at least the article said that it's in your own hands or something to that effect.
Yes. It doesn't have to be necessarily that. Yeah. But it reduces your risk of prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And all kinds of good benefits there, which makes sense. I mean, all of this, heart, mind, spirit, body, all of that's tied together, and it's something taboo in our society, but it's something that's there and it's part of our body, so it makes sense.
Right. And I kind of giggle because I'm so immature, but
me too.
Nonetheless, I read that article, and we'll provide that. Anybody that wants to see that, we'll give you the Harvey Watt Aviation Medical Bulletin. But I read that and I was like, first of all, that's a major conflict of interest. I know the author of the study was a dude. And so I'm not sure that I trust the results because he's majorly conflicted. But anyway.
I want to say it was done by Boston University.
That's
Those
true.
guys
Yeah.
are smart over in Boston.
Yeah, that's
Public
true.
health.
Whatever it
I
takes.
I'm pushing it. Anyways, I think mind, spirit, body. To your point, circling back to getting the instructor, getting instructors for all those kind of things or help, right? Building your team.
Yeah.
You don't do your own taxes. You get a CPA to do that because they've forgotten more about taxes than you'll ever know. Same with investing. Same with working out potentially, and religious aspects. You're going to have somebody there to help you along those lines, and even mental health is so important right now, especially for our service women and men, that getting help with their mental health is super important. It's not something to be frowned upon or made fun of anymore. So getting those people that are experts and do it for a living to help you with those things, just like hiring a mechanic or a plumber or whatever to do certain things, is so important to build your team, I think, and you'll be more successful. And if you do these, do a lot of these things, you're going to be probably live longer, be wealthier, and those go hand in hand. So, Charlie, any wrap ups? I know we've said last, but
that's all I got, man.
Okay.
It's an amazing, powerful topic. I hope it helps.
Yeah, I hope you guys like it. And if you don't, shoot us an email. Let us know. We'll probably do a follow up on this one just because there's so much to tackle here. But a couple of brief quotes for you to ponder on your drive or your flight or your morning ritual. This first one's from Peter Attia, of course, Dr. Peter Attia. If you're really interested in preventing heart disease, which, by the way, is the number one cause of death in men and women in the United States and in the world, it's the 4-for-4 champion of death. It's the champion of death. It's such the champion of death that for every woman who dies of breast cancer, there's around 8 to 12 women who are dying of a heart disease. So he says, pink ribbons matter, red ribbons matter more. And that's not downplaying, obviously, breast cancer. That's very important. This disease would be largely preventable if people didn't smoke, they controlled their blood pressure, and had I don't know this term too much. APOB levels that were equivalent to the levels that they had as children.
Yeah.
He talks about APOB and VO2 max levels a lot. But anyways, that's the first one. The second one's by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who we obviously quote all the time. The man who grasps principles can successfully select his own methods. The man who tries methods, ignoring principles, is sure to have trouble. That's it. Let us be the first to welcome you to the final destination of Flight 58, Health and Wealth. Did you learn anything from this free podcast? If so, pay it forward. Tell someone about us or leave us a review. We aim to make the world better stewards of their money. Help us do this. Please shoot us any questions you would like us to cover on the Q&A portion or questions from the flight deck portion. And remember, as Emerson said, the world makes way for those who know where they're going. And as I say, so plan accordingly. From all of us at the Pilot Money Guys, we optimistically and successfully wish you smooth rides and soft in the zone landings.
Leading Edge Financial Planning, LLC is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Leading Edge Financial Planning and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For additional information, please visit our website at www.leadingedgeplanning.com. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice, and it should not be relied on as such. It should not be considered a solicitation to buy or an offer to sell a security. It does not take into account any investor's particular investment objectives, strategies, tax status, or investment horizon. You should consult your attorney or tax advisor. The views expressed in this commentary are subject to change based on market and other conditions. These documents may contain certain statements that may be deemed forward-looking statements. Please note that any such statements are not guarantees of any future performance, and actual results or developments may differ materially from these projected. Any projections, market outlooks, or estimates are based upon certain assumptions and should not be construed as indicative of actual events that will occur. All information has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but its accuracy is not guaranteed. There is no representation or warranty as to the current accuracy, reliability, or completeness of, nor liability for, decisions based on such information, and it should not be relied on as such.